Come in. Hi. Come and have a seat. Just having that first morning pint and coffee now. I was thinking yesterday, or the other day, I can't even remember when it was, when you last called. I was reading Keats's poem, When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be, and thinking about the Keats-Shakespeare connection, and really rejoicing the way one poet sort of kindles and helps another. And because this is a real Keats year, it's the 200th anniversary of his death, I was thinking more about Keats, and I was thinking about the living poets that, you know, Keats himself could have encountered, and in fact did encounter. And of course, the other poet that I really, well, I like all the romantics, but I've given over, you know, many years of my life to not only the reading but the study of Coleridge. I wrote a biography of Coleridge, and it suddenly occurred to me I've got an account in there of Coleridge and Keats meeting, and a little speculation about the influence that meeting had on Keats. Coleridge is older, of course. He was sort of first generation romantic. So I thought it might be fun to just show you that. I'll get... I mean, I'm not the first person to discover this, of course. Keats's letters were published quite shortly after his death and form very much part of his reputation. He tells the story in his letters. So this is my book, Mariner, A Voyage of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. It's a bit of a sort of magnum opus. Anyway, towards the end of it, I tell the story of how, after his many voyages and adventures, Coleridge returns to London. And in April of 1819, so that's the year after Keats wrote the poem we read the other day, the When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be, he's on Hampstead Heath, and he happens to bump into Coleridge, of course, whom he admires. I mean, Keats has read and admired Coleridge, and Coleridge, it was Coleridge's and Wordsworth's lyrical ballads, and Coleridge's other poems. There's a new collection of Coleridge's poetry had come out, Sibylline Leaves, 2 years earlier in 1817. I mean, so Keats would have been a real fan and would have been thrilled to see Coleridge ambling across the heath. So this is how I put it. The other great romantic poet of the new generation, John Keats, was already an ardent reader of Coleridge when they met by chance on Hampstead Heath in April 1819. Whereas most people who met Coleridge describe him as a great talker, but don't give us an exact idea of what he actually said, Keats produces a fair menu, and this is an extract now from a letter of Keats in which he just lists, while they walked across Hampstead Heath, the topics of conversation that Coleridge brought up. Because Coleridge was a great talker, magnificent, it was a great sort of fountain of ideas and insight and knowledge just flowing out of him. So this is Keats on Coleridge. I walked with him for near 2 miles, I suppose, and in these 2 miles he broached 1,000 things. Let me see if I can give you a list. Nightingales, poetry, on poetical sensation, metaphysics, different genera and species of dream, nightmare, a dream accompanied by a sense of touch, single and double touch, a dream related, first and second consciousness, the difference between will and volition. So many metaphysicians from a want of smoking, the second consciousness, monsters, the kraken, mermaids, Southey believes in them, Southey's belief too much diluted, a ghost story, good morning. Coleridge also remembered this encounter. After he had left us a little way, he came back and said, "Let me carry away the memory, Coleridge, of having pressed your hand." Indeed, Keats may have carried away, this is me commenting on it now, Keats may have carried away far more than that. He was on the cusp of his own great Annus Mirabilis, and later that April he would write La Belle Dame sans Merci, drawing as it does in phrase and form on Coleridge's poem Love, which had been republished in Sibylline Leaves. Then in the coming 2 months, Keats read the Ode to a Nightingale and the other great odes, all of which draw on something of the rich music and tone of intimate conversation which Coleridge had pioneered in the conversation poems. So it occurred to me that since I said I thought that Keats's beautiful romantic ballad, La Belle sans Merci, about the knight and the lady, might have been influenced by Coleridge's poem Love, which is also about a bard who sings about a knight and a lady in order to win a lady's love. I thought, why don't I just look at the two of them again and see if I was right back in the day. So I'll just wander over here and we'll get out Coleridge's Sibylline Leaves and the second volume in that nice Florence Press 2-volume Keats. So Keats went away from that conversation with Coleridge and wrote La Belle sans Merci, which we'll read together in a second. It's just so beautiful. What can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge is withered from the lake and no birds sing. And it, of course, goes on to meet the lady in the meads and the fairy's child. And I thought, I think there's again, it's one poet learning from another. This is Love, which is famously begins, all thoughts, all passions, all delights, whatever stirs this mortal frame, are all but ministers of love and feed his sacred flame. And then the moonshine stealing o'er the scene had blended with the lights of eve, and she was there, my hope, my joy, my own dear Genevieve. I played a soft and doleful air, I sang an old and moving story, an old rude song that suited well that ruin wild and hoary. She listened with a flitting blush, with downcast eyes and modest grace, for well she knew I could not choose but gaze upon her face. I told her of the knight that wore upon his shield a burning brand, and that for 10 long years he wooed the lady of the land. So he goes on to tell the story of the knight and the lady. Is that lovely? She half enclosed me with her arms, she pressed me with a meek embrace, and bending back her head looked up and gazed upon my face. You can feel the rhythm, you can feel the simplicity of language, you can feel the intimacy of tone and tenor. So Coleridge had published that originally quite a lot earlier in his career, but then recently republished it in this volume, of which this is a first edition of 1817. Now let's just read what Keats does. Now this is not to say that Keats is simply derivative, because Keats takes that tone and tenor and that metre and makes something actually far greater than Coleridge's own poem. It's lifted into another realm altogether. I'll read you the whole of La Belle sans Merci. It's not that long. I'm doing this partly because, as you may remember, I had a go at that ballad of Sir Galahad, and I feel I might be going back into ballad mode and writing some more Galahad ballads, so the more I hear this metre, the better. La Belle sans Merci. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge is withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard and so woebegone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest's done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheek a fading rose fast withereth too. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long, for sideways would she lean and sing a fairy song. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild and manna dew, and sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. She took me to her elfin grot, and there she gazed and sighed full sore, and there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses 4. and there she lulled me asleep, and there I dreamed. Ah, woe betide, the latest dream I ever dreamed on the cold hillside. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, La belle dame sans merci hath thee in thrall. I saw their starved lips in the gloam, with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke and found me here on the cold hillside. And this is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sedge is withered from the lake, and no birds sing. That's just luminous poetry. And that was what Keats, in that last poem we read the other day, was afraid he wouldn't write. You know, there's those wonderful sense of the cloudy symbols of the high romance and the meditative state of fairy love. Then yet he did live to write those things, not much longer, but he lived long enough to write that and The Ode to a Nightingale. So I've always felt my books talk to each other across the rooms, and it's sometimes nice to know that even as the books, the volumes, talk to each other, so Keats and Coleridge are having a conversation, but that even my own book on Coleridge actually records the conversation they had really and in life. And of course they still have a conversation together in my mind. Well, thanks for dropping round. Good to see you.